Okay, text 6 from chapter 2. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti rohoksaja ahoitiki patiyata yayatma suprasiditi. Synonyms: sa, that; vai, certainly; pumsam, for humankind; para, supreme; dharma, occupation; yata, by which; bhakti, devotional service; adhoksaja, unto the transcendence; ahoitiki, causeless; apratiyata, unbroken; yaya, by which; atma, the self; suprasiditi, completely satisfied. Translation: the supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. You read the first paragraph, I'll read the second one.
All right. The purport is, in this statement, Śrīmad Goswami answers the first question of the sages of Naim Saramna. The sages asked them to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential part so that fallen people or the people in the general might easily take it up. The Vedas prescribe two different types of occupation for the human being. One is called the Pravati Marga, or the path of sense enjoyment, and the other is called the Nivriya Marga, or the path of the renunciation. The path of enjoyment is inferior, and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. The material existence of the living being is a disease conditioned of the actual life, but the actual life is spiritual existence, or the Brahma Bhuta existence, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Material existence is temporary, illusory, and full of miseries. There is no happiness at all. There is just the futile attempt, futile attempt to get rid of the miseries, and temporary cessations of misery is falsely called happiness. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable, and illusory, is inferior. But devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads one to the eternal, blissful, and all cognizant life, is called the superior quality of occupation. This is sometimes polluted when mixed with the inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path of renunciation. Renunciation, or abnegation, for ultimate good is certainly a better occupation than enjoyment in the disease condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality. Without the least desire for material enjoyment, one should therefore accept a superior quality of occupation in the form of devotional service of the Lord, without any tinge of unnecessary desire, fruitive activities, and philosophical speculation. This alone can lead one to perpetual solace in the of his service.
Yeah, I like that part where it says the progressive material enjoyment path is temporary, miserable, and illusory, and it's inferior. And it's like the cessation of miseries is called enjoyment. It's like when you bang your head against the wall. When you stop banging your head against the wall, then you're enjoying. Or like when somebody's being waterboarded or something, dunked in the river, and when he comes out of the river, he's like gasping for air and he's feeling like he's happy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good example.
We have purposefully denoted dharma as occupation because the root meaning of the word dharma is, quote, that which sustains one's existence, end quote. A living being's sustenance of existence is to coordinate his activities and his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Krishna is the central pivot of living beings, and he is the all-attractive living entity or eternal form among all other living beings or eternal forms. Each and every living being has his eternal form in the spiritual existence, and Krishna is the eternal attraction for all of them. Krishna is the complete whole, and everything else is his part and parcel. The relation is one of the servant and the served. It is transcendental and is completely distinct from our experience in material existence. This relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. One can realize it as devotional service progresses. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendental loving service of the Lord, even in the present conditional stage of material existence. That will gradually give one the clue to actual life and please him to full satisfaction. So, you develop a relationship with Krishna by engaging in his service. It's about Krishna's service, not about our realization or our bliss or anything. It's Krishna's service. We should figure out what he wants and what his desires are and try to accommodate his desires. And to know that what his desires are, we have to chant, we have to read, and when we get a clue. And all of these things are we're not able to perceive these things unless we have the association of devotees, especially the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada has written all these books, and he's an intimate associate of Krishna. So he knows all of Krishna's pastimes. He knows how to please Krishna. And if we offer everything that we do in the service of Krishna to the spiritual master first, then it will be more likely that Krishna will accept it, because Krishna, just like Radharani, if somebody approaches Radharani, Radharani goes to Krishna and says, "Oh, Krishna, please engage this person." And if Radharani asks Krishna, then Krishna will accept that person. So, it's just a matter of becoming a servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis. A dāsa gopi bhartu padakamalayar dāsa anudas. We're a servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis of Krishna. And that's our constitutional position. And that's how because the gopis are actually the purest servants of Krishna. They're actually selfless. And if we want to become selfless and pure, then we can actually enter into Krishna's pastimes. We'll be allowed into Krishna's pastimes. And just by that, understanding what he wants to take us back and engage in us in his loving service. He wants us to engage in the love dance of Krishna's associates. And so he wants to bring us back because he wants to share in that happiness. So that's why we have to figure out what he wants. And then when we do what he wants, then we'll be happy, because when a servant is most happy when the master is pleased, just like, it's just like a king and a servant. If the king is pleased, then the servant will automatically be satisfied as well. So that service attitude is there. And it's really important that we engage in Krishna's service through the spiritual master and find out what Krishna wants through the devotee of Krishna, because that's the most intimate form. Krishna says, "One who claims to be my devotee is not my devotee. One who claims to be a devotee of my devotee, he's my devotee." Okay, text 7. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojata Janat Yati Asu Vairagyam Gyanam Chayada Hoitakam. Synonyms: Vasudeva unto Krishna, Bhagavati unto the personality of Godhead, Bhakti Yoga, contact of devotional service, Prayojita being applied, Janayati does produce, Ashu very soon, Vairagyam detachment, Jnanam knowledge, Yat and Yat that which, Ahoitakam causeless. Translation: by rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world.
The purport.
You read the first, I'll read the second one.
Yeah. All right. The purport: those who consider devotional service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna to be something like material emotional affairs may argue that the revealed scriptures, sacrifice, charity, austerity, knowledge, mystic powers, and similar other processes of transcendental realization are recommended. According to them, bhakti, or the devotional service of the Lord, is meant for those who cannot perform the high grade activities. Generally, it is said that the bhakti cult is meant for the Sudras, Vaishyas, is that how you say it?
Vaishyas, yeah.
Yeah, Vaishyas, and the less intelligent women class. But that is not the actual fact. The bhakti cult is the topmost of all transcendental activities, and therefore it is simultaneously sublime and easy. It is sublime for the pure devotees who are serious about getting in contact with the Supreme Lord, and it is easy for the neophytes who are just on the threshold of the house of bhakti to achieve the contact of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is a great science, and it is open for all living beings, including the Sudras, Vaishyas, women, and even those lower than the low-born Sudras. So what to speak of the high-class men like the qualified Brahmanas and the great self-realized kings? The other high-grade activities designated as sacrifice, charity, austerity, etc., are all corollary of factors following the pure and scientific bhakti cult.
The principles of knowledge and detachment are two important factors on the path of transcendental realization. The whole spiritual process leads to perfect knowledge of everything, material and spiritual. And the result of such perfect knowledge is that one becomes detached from material affection and becomes attached to spiritual activities. Becoming detached from material things does not mean becoming inert altogether, as men with a poor fund of knowledge think. Nice karma means not undertaking activities that will produce good or bad effects. Nice karma means not good karma or bad karma. Negation does not mean negation of the positive. Negation of the non-essentials does not mean negation of the essential. Similarly, detachment from material forms does not mean nullifying the positive form. The bhakti cult is meant for realization of the positive form. When the positive form is realized, then the negative forms are automatically eliminated. Therefore, with the development of the bhakti cult, with the application of positive service to the positive form, one naturally becomes detached from inferior things and he becomes attached to superior things. Similarly, the bhakti cult, being the supermost occupation of the living being, leaves him out of material sense enjoyment. That is a sign of a pure devotee. He's not a fool, nor is he engaged in the inferior energies, nor does he have material values. This is not possible by dry reasoning. It actually happens by the grace of the Almighty. In conclusion, one who is a pure devotee has all other good qualities, namely knowledge, detachment, etc. But one who has only knowledge and detachment is not necessarily well acquainted with the principles of the bhakti cult. Bhakti is the supermost occupation of the human being. Text 8. Dharman shvanustita pumshams vikshakshena kataisya napadyadyadiratim shrameva hi kevalam. Synonyms: dharma, occupation, svanustita, executed in terms of one's own position, pumsham, of humankind, vishvakshena, the personality of Godhead, plenary portion, katashu, in the message of ya, what is, na, not, upadayet, does produce, yadi, if, ratim, attraction, shrama, useless labor, eva, only, he, certainly, kevalam, entirely. This is another important verse.
Yeah.
Translation: the occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. Good.
The purport is there are different occupational activities in terms of man's different conceptions of life. To the gross materialist, who cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, there is nothing beyond the senses. Therefore, his occupational activities are limited to concentrated and extended selflessness. selfishness. Concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body. This is generally seen amongst the lower animals. Extended selfishness is manifested in human society and centers around the family, society, community, nation, and the world with a view to gross bodily comfort. Above those gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft in the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness limited to the body and mind. But above the body and the mind is the dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of the bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. But less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul.
It's just amazing, you know. It's like all this poetry and philosophy and propagating this ism or that ism, communism, democracy, you know, all these different isms. It's just another form of selfishness that's limited to the body and mind.
Yes.
Because foolish people have no information of the soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind, they're not satisfied in the performance of their occupational duties. The question of the satisfaction of the self is raised herein. The self is beyond the gross body and subtle mind. He is the potent active principle of the body and mind. Without knowing the need of the dormant soul, one cannot be happy. Simply with emolument of the body and mind, the body and the mind are but superfluous outer coverings of the spirit soul. The spirit soul's needs must be fulfilled. Simply by cleansing the cage of the bird, one does not satisfy the bird. One must actually know the needs of the bird himself. Go ahead.
The need of the spirit soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desires for complete freedom. He wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. He wants to see the free light in the spirit. The complete freedom is achieved when he meets the complete spirit and personality of Godhead. There is a dormant affection for God within everyone. Spiritual existence is manifested through the gross body and mind in the form of perverted affection for gross and subtle matter. Therefore, we have to engage ourselves in occupational engagements that will evoke our divine consciousness. This is possible only by hearing and chanting the divine activities of the Supreme Lord, and any occupational activity which does not help one to achieve attachment. For hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead is said herein to be simply a waste of time. This because of other occupational duties, whatever ism they may belong to, that you were just talking about that,
Yeah.
cannot give liberation to the soul. Even the activities of the salvationists are considered to be useless because of their failure to pick up the fountainhead of all liberties. The gross materialist can practically see that his material gain is limited only to time and space, either in this world or in the other. If he goes up to the Sarvaloka, he will find no permanent abode for his hankering soul. The hankering soul must be satisfied by the perfect scientific process of perfect devotional service.
Yeah. The salvationists are also materially inclined because they want to get freedom from birth and death. But the fountainhead of all liberties, that means devotional service, bhakti. That's the fountainhead of all liberties.
Never heard of salvationists before.
You know, like somebody called mukti. Mukti, there's somebody who wants to get free from this material existence, you know, the pleasures and pains of the material existence, and go to a place where you don't have to take birth, get old, sick, or diseased. That's the salvationist. You know, they get free from the material body, the material world. you know, even if you get free, but if you only want that, that's really not pure devotional service, because you're still wanting something, you know.
Oh,
But a
I see
devotee
what you're
really
saying.
only wants to serve Krishna. It doesn't matter, even if he's born life after life, he still wants to serve Krishna. It's his permanent occupation. Doesn't matter whether he's doing it in heaven or in hell. You know, it's like the verse from my name, the Śikṣāṣtaka prayers, Nayanam Galada Shrudaya Vadanam Gada. No, wait, it goes, I don't care whether I take birth again. I just want to engage in your devotional service life after life. In other words, he doesn't even want liberation. He wants to be, if he has to be born again and again, let it be in the house of a devotee. Let me be engaged in devotional service with your devotees, because then I will be permanently happy with that service. Doesn't matter where you are. Text 9. Dharmasya hiopavargasya narto ratayo pakalpate. Nartasya dharmai kantasya kamolabhaya hi smrita. Synonyms: dharmasya, occupational engagement, he certainly. Apavargasya, ultimate liberation, not. Arta and ataya, for material gain. Upakalpate is meant for neither. Artasya, for material gain. Dharmaika antasya, for one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service. Kama, sense gratification. Labhaya, attainment of. He, exactly. Smrita is described by the great sages. Translation: all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to the sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. This is one of Prabhupada's favorite verses. Go ahead.
The purport is, we have already discussed the pure devotional service to the Lord is automatically followed by perfect knowledge and detached from the material existence. But there are others who consider that all kinds of different occupational engagements, including those of religion, are meant for material gain. The general tendency of an ordinary man in any part of the world is to gain some material benefit to exchange for religious or any other occupational service. Even in the Vedic literatures, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered, and most people are attracted by such allurements or blessings of religiosity. Why are such so-called men of religion allured by material gain? Because material gain can enable one to fulfill desires, which is to satisfy sense gratification. This cycle of occupational engagement include so-called religiosity, followed by material gain, and material gain followed by fulfillment of desires. Sense gratification is the general way for all sorts of fully occupied men. But in the statement of Sutta Goswami, as per the verdict of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, this is nullified by the present of the sloka. One should not engage himself in any sort of occupational service for material gain only, nor should material gain be utilized for sense gratification. How material gain should be utilized is described as follows.
Text 10. Kamasya nindriya pratir labdho jiveta yavata jivasi tattva jignasa narto yas. Whoops. Okay. Running out of time here. We've got 10 minutes left. Narto yas sheha karmibi. Synonym: kamasya, of desires. Not. Indriya, senses. Priti, satisfaction. Labha, gain. Jiveta, self-preservation. Yavata, so much so. Jivasya, of the living being. Tattva, the absolute truth. Jignasa, inquiries. Not. Artha. And yachaiha, whatsoever else. Karma B, by occupational activities. Translation: life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. You read the whole paragraph.
Yeah. Purport is the completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed toward the fulfillment of desires and sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, and philanthropy, and ultimately in religion or even in salvation, the very same tint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. In the political field, of the leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. The voters adore the so-called leaders only when they promise the sense gratification. As soon as the voters are dissatisfied with their own sense gratification, they dethrone the leaders. The leaders must always disappoint the voters by not satisfying their senses. The same is applicable in all other fields. No one is serious about the problems of life. Even those who are on the path of salvation, desire is to become one with the absolute truth and desire to commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification. But the Bhagavatam says that one should not live for sense gratification. One should satisfy the senses only in so much as required for self-preservation and not for sense gratification, because the body is made of senses which are required a certain amount of satisfaction. There are regulative. Oh, I lost me something. There are regulative directions for satisfactions of the senses, but the senses are not meant for unrestricted enjoyment. For example, marriage or the combination of the man with a woman is necessary for progeny, but it is not meant for sense enjoyment. In the absence of voluntary restraint, there is propaganda for family planning, but foolish men do not know that family planning is automatically executed as soon as there is such search for the absolute truth. Seekers of the absolute truth are never lured by unnecessary engagements in sense gratification, because the serious student seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. In every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking after the absolute truth. And that sort of engagement will make one happy because he will be less engaged in varieties of sense gratification. And what is the absolute truth is explained as follows.
Yeah, that part where it says the path of salvation is desired to become one with the absolute truth and commit spiritual suicide. In other words, you want to become God. You want to become one with God. And that means that you're emerge into God and you don't want to be a person anymore. So that's kind of like a spiritual suicide or, personal suicide. It's like if you want to merge with the Supreme, where are you then? You want to have a relationship with the Supreme, not to merge with the Supreme. That's spiritual suicide too. So all these different kinds of things, philanthropy and all these things, politics, social service, altruism, religion, and even salvation, the very same sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. In other words, it's selfish. All these things are selfish. The only pure thing is when one surrenders to Krishna and acts according to his instructions. And ultimately, by doing that, one becomes purified to the point where your service is unmotivated and uninterrupted. If you're unmotivated, how can you be selfish? Right?
Yeah.
Text 11. Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti subdite. This is the definition of the absolute truth. Synonyms. Vedanti, they say that tattva vida, the learned souls, tattvam, the absolute truth, yet which jnanam, knowledge, advayam, non-dual, brahmiti, known as Brahman, paramatmiti, known as Paramatma, Bhagavaniti, known as Bhagavan, subdite. It's so sounded. Translation. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. You read the first paragraph.
The purport is that the absolute truth is both subject and object, and there is no qualitative difference there. Therefore, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the how do you pronounce that word?
Aranyagarbhas.
The yogis, and as the Bhagavan by the devotees. In other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead, is the last word of the absolute truth. Paramatma is the partial representation of the personality of Godhead, and impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead, as the sun rays are to the sun god. Less intelligent students of either of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own respective realization, but those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above three features of the one absolute truth are different perspective views seen from different angles of vision.
As is explained in the first shloka of the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, the supreme truth is self-sufficient, cognizant, and free from the illusion of relativity. In the relative world, the knower is different from the known, but in the absolute truth, both the knower and the known are one and the same thing. In the relative world, the knower is the living spirit or superior energy, whereas the known is inert matter or inferior energy. Therefore, there is a duality of inferior and superior energy, whereas in the absolute realm, both the knower and the known are the same superior energy. There are three kinds of energies of the supreme energetic. There's no difference between the energy and energetic, but there is a difference of quality of energies. The absolute realm and the living entities are of the same spiritual superior energy, but the material world is inferior energy. The living being in contact with the inferior energy is illusioned, thinking he belongs to the inferior energy. Therefore, there is the sense of relativity in the material world. In the absolute, there is no such sense of difference between the knower and the known, and therefore everything there is absolute. Okay, we got to end here. Probably got a minute left. Do you have any questions?
I will say, so Lord Balaram Parents' Day is probably a good day to go. You were probably saying as a recommended to at least understand Balaram, because I don't really know much about.
There'll probably be a class about, or a program that talks about Balaram's pastimes, and it's a wonderful festival. I'll send you a link to this link to Balaram that is explained in the Chaitanya Bhagavatam. It'll blow your mind. Balaram is an unbelievable personality, and I was blown away when I read this. But anyway,
wow. Yeah.
Thank you for joining, and hopefully we'll have more people next time.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Zoe couldn't come on because she had something to do. But
yeah,
I'll talk to you next week, Al. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.